Hi, this is Mrs. Ellison, and you are watching the Algebra 1 Chapter 7 practice test. We start with number 1. The table shows values of x and y for the equation 8x minus 4y equals 0. What is the value of y when x equals 3? So they are giving us a pattern, basically, and asking us to find the next value in the pattern here. What we can do is either find a way to get from each x value to its corresponding y value, or we can notice that there's a pattern to the x's here. They're all going up by 1, and then we're going to go up 1 more. So we could just figure out how this is changing. To get from -4 to -2, then from -2 to 0 to 2 to 4, each time we're adding 2. So really all we need to do is add 2 here, and we'll get 6. So the answer to number 1 is B. Number 2 says the formula for the area of a trapezoid is area equals 1/2 times the height times the sum of the two bases, and that would be your parallel sides in your trapezoid. If the height is increased by a factor of 1.7, by what factor will the area increase? So we're trying to see what effect this increase in height will have on the area. And what we can do is instead of using h, we could plug in 1.7h and just see how that changes. And all that's going to do here is multiply our original answer by 1.7 as well. The answer here is D. If we had also increased the length of the bases by 1.7, that would have increased here as well, and we would be multiplying that 1.7 by another increase. That would have been different. But since it's just outside the parentheses here, we can just say it's increasing the area by 1.7 times as well. Number 3, we purchased a basketball hoop, and after the sales tax of 5.5% was applied, the total cost came to $179.35. How much money would we have saved if we had used a coupon good for a 10% discount? And remember that discounts apply before taxes. So we really have a lot going on in this problem. Something we need to remember is that we don't get a discount on the taxes. We will have to pay the same amount of tax that we originally would have had to pay if we hadn't used the discount coupon. So what we need to figure out is how much of this $179.35, how much of that is the total cost of the hoop and how much of it is the total cost of the tax. Excuse me. So one way to kind of approach that is you think the hoop cost 100% and the tax was 5.5%. So our total would be the sum of those two, which would be 105.5%. Now the reason I'm doing this is the total is 105% of the cost of the hoop. So if you recall back when we talked about percentages, we could set up a proportion to solve this type of problem. And that would give us 105.5 times the cost of the hoop equals 100 times the total. Oh, ran out of room there. 100 times the total. And to find the cost of the hoop, we would divide both sides by 105.5. So 100 times the total over 105.5. 105.5. Okay. And now looking at that, we know that our total back up here in the problem was 179.35. So that is 100 times 179.35 divided by 105.5. And putting that into the calculator gives us that the hoop cost $170. That was the cost of the hoop that they were charging. Now, the last piece of this problem requires us to figure out what our price would be with a 10% discount, and that will actually be the 10% discount itself is what we would save then. So to find the discount, we need to find out what is 10% of the $170 that we just calculated. That's the same thing as 0.10 times 170, which is $17. And that's our answer then. That's what our discount coupon would save us. So the answer on number 3 is D. Okay, excuse me. Number 4. Hank went to the supermarket and purchased some roast beef and a loaf of bread for a total of $11.54. The bread cost $3.44 and the roast beef sells for $5.40 per pound. How many pounds of roast beef did he buy? So we can set this equation up, and let's see, we have some roast beef and one loaf of bread. The bread was $3.44, so the roast beef that he bought, oops, let's move that over just a little bit. The roast beef that he bought was for $5.40 per pound. So $5.40 times however many pounds of roast beef. And then we'll add to that the $3.44 to the bread, and that equals his total of $11.54. So we just have to solve this equation. We would subtract 344 from each side. That would give us 540R equals 810. And then we would divide both sides by 540. And we would get that R is equal to 1.5. So he bought 1.5 pounds. That's answer C. Number 5, we've been practicing in preparation to try out for the basketball team. And here's a table, and we are wondering how many she's likely to shoot on a day during the 6th week of training. So again, this is similar to number 1. We've noticed that these all go up by 1 each time. These all appear to go up by 6 each time. But the key here to remember is that we're not looking for the next one. We're looking for the one after that. So instead of, we could find 5 and then move up to 6. This would be plus 6 here and plus 6 here. We could just add 12 to 58, and the answer is D, 70. Number 6, simplify 4 to the negative second power. Okay, we're into the actual questions from this chapter out of the review. 4 to the negative second power, we talked about that equaling 1 over 4 to the positive second power, and 4 squared is 16. So that's the answer here is 1/16, C. Number 7, simplify this expression here. We can look at these as individual fractions. Might be helpful. If we put in one fraction all of the things that are just numbers, then we would have the -3 in the top, and the w's could go into one fraction. That puts a w to the 0 in the top. The r's could go into one fraction. That puts an r to the -5th in the top, and the t's could go in one fraction. That puts a t to the -3rd in the bottom. Anywhere we don't have anything, we'll just put a 1. And then we need to look for things that will move from either the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top. And in my class, I talked about that being the kid with the bad attitude. They need to go downstairs to change their attitude to a positive one. So we'll move this kid downstairs. This kid has a negative attitude downstairs, so he'll come upstairs to get positive. Now, while this 3 is negative, this isn't a negative exponent. That's just a -3. So we would leave him alone. He's perfectly happy where he is. W to the 0 power. We talked about any number to the 0 power is 1, so that's all this is. And we can then just ignore this fraction entirely. 1 over 1 is just going to multiply our fraction by 1, which doesn't change anything. So in the top, we have this fraction stays -3 over 1. This becomes 1 over r to the positive 5th, and this becomes t to the positive 3rd over 1. And then when we multiply across the top, we have -3 times 1 times t cubed, so -3t cubed. And in the bottom, we have 1 times r to the 5th times 1, so we have r to the 5th. And that answer is A. Number 8 says find the value of the expression 176 times 10 to the -6th. So if we have 176, the decimal is here. It's just assumed to be here at the end of the number when it's not actually drawn in. To the -6th means that we're going to go smaller. We're going to move our decimal to the left-hand side 6 times. So we'll go back 1, 2, 3, and then an additional 1, 2, 3, and fill those spots in with zeros. So we should have a decimal followed by 3 zeros and then 176. That would be B. Number 9, the planet Mars has an average distance from the Sun of about 141,600,000 miles. Write this number in scientific notation. So the decimal again here is at the end of the number, and we talked about in scientific notation, the rules are that we have one number that's not 0 in front of the decimal. So we need our new decimal to be here. That gives us 1.416. And it's always times the power of 10, so we need to know how many numbers then are between where our decimal is and where it should be. And here's 3, 6, 7, 8. That'll be positive 8 because this is a large number, so that indicates a positive exponent. 9 would be A. Number 10, simplify a to the ninth times b to the ninth times a to the fifth. This means we can, since it's all multiplication, we can regroup these however we want to. We can put our a's together, which is what we'd like to do to simplify it. A to the ninth times a to the fifth, and then we also have a b to the ninth. This means we're multiplying 9 a's, and then we're multiplying that by 5 more a's. So altogether, we would have 9 plus 5, which is 14. So this is a to the 14th, b to the ninth. That's answer choice A. In number 11, we have a power to a power here. And what I talked about in class was that this means we have -8 groups of 2x's. So if we just kind of ignore the fact that this is negative just for a second, we have 8 groups of 2, which is 16. And then we have a positive times a negative, that's our shortcut, is multiplying these together. So that's x to the -16th, and then times x squared. So we talked about just now how when we multiply two powers with the same base, we can add those exponents together. This would be x to the -14th. But we can't leave this like it is. I see that's one of the answer choices, but that's not right because simplified expressions do not have negative exponents. What we need to do is send this bad attitude downstairs to get positive, and that would be answer choice D. Number 12 says to simplify q to the third, y to the fourth, over qy squared. And when we have nothing in the parentheses except multiplication, we can distribute that exponent. So this becomes q to the third, y to the fourth, over, this would be q to the second, y to the second. And then we can split this into two fractions. We have q to the third over q to the second times y to the fourth over y to the second. If we want to use our shortcut, we can, or we can simply think of this as this is 3q's over 2q's. Whoops, that's a g. Sorry about that. And two of those cancel, leaving us with one q on the top. And here we have 4 y's, and down below that we have 2 y's. So two of those cancel, so that leaves us with 2 y's up at the top. So we could just use that as our answer, qy squared, and that's answer choice D. Number 13 asks us to simplify 2/5 to the -4th. When we have a fraction that's raised to a negative power, we can start that off by flipping the fraction over. So in essence, what we're doing is saving us a step here. We can then distribute that exponent since there's nothing in here but division. That becomes 5 to the 4th over 2 to the 4th, and that is 625 over 16. That is answer choice A. I'm going to stop video 1 here, and we will pick back up with number 14 in video 2. Thank you.